2023 being projected to be a year of a possible recession, nonprofit organizations focused on fighting global poverty are facing an uphill battle. How do you improve the lives of the impoverished while deteriorating economic metrics remain a barrier? Well, one CEO has an answer. We spoke with Jacqueline Novogratz, who is the CEO of Acumen, and she told us how her companies are getting things done for the poor and the disadvantaged.
All of us that COVID and Ukraine especially disrupted supply chains around the world, moved us back into more poverty. We saw over 100 million people move into extreme poverty over the last 3 years. The war in Ukraine disrupted oil supply chains, wheat supplies into Africa where it was deeply needed, and that then had an impact on smallholder farmers, food systems across the continent, but particularly we felt it deeply in East and West Africa. So no doubt there. And if anything, between COVID and the Ukraine, we all have to be reminded of our interconnectedness as a world, the spirit of Ubuntu, that I am because you are, and that we need to find joint solutions to these global problems that impact the poor so disproportionately.
Sri Lanka defaulted on its debt. Ghana is trying to get some help from the IMF. You're seeing issues with Pakistan, Lebanon. From your vantage point, what do you think can be done about debt relief? Is there a silver bullet, maybe debt forgiveness, or is it going to be some other solution that's more gradual?
So we work very extensively in Pakistan, in Ghana, in many of these places that have been hardest hit, and both are needed. We need systems change. Where possible, universal basic income, debt relief, as you're talking about, and so do we need individual change. At the heart of it, which is what Acumen so represents, is the idea of moral leadership, that what we do is invest in those entrepreneurs that are building solutions to poverty, which over time can really scale and eventually work partner with government to solve big problems of poverty. It takes a different kind of leadership than a leadership that is focused too often on a single bottom line, profit, or on a worldview that is what is good for me is probably not what is good for you. And that's the shift that needs to be made, moral leadership.
Fair point. That's a fair point. I want to ask you about Acumen Capital Partners, which you put together to structure and manage funds that fill a critical gap with respect to social enterprise. Considering where things are with the global headwinds, have you had to scale back some of the targets that you set for Acumen Capital Partners?
No, this is not a moment for any of us to be scaling back. It is the moment for us to be leaning in, to be bold and audacious. Acumen works across the spectrum. In the early stages, we take philanthropy and invest what we call patient capital, 10 to 15-year equity and debt in entrepreneurs that are solving big problems of poverty like agriculture, energy, education, healthcare. Those companies, there are about 150 of them, into which we've invested about $150 million of philanthropy as equity, have impacted about 430 million lives. We know it works. And if those companies are going to grow to scale, they need more traditional forms of capital. And that's why we started Acumen Capital Partners, where we now have 4 funds with about $200 million in assets under management to grow these companies to a new level. Where we are right now is to realize that the world is more unequal, more fragile than it has been over the last 5 years. And so we need new kinds of capital instruments so that we can do things like extend off-grid solar energy to every human being on the planet. And I think these kinds of big initiatives that can't be done with business as usual, either from a fully financially investment-oriented way, nor from a charity-oriented way, have to be solved and can be solved.
All right, all right. So you're not scaling back, and you're still forging ahead. All right, what about Acumen Academy? Now you put together a community that is set up to solve problems, and at this point in time, I don't think there's a better time than now with all the problems that are facing the global economy. So has Acumen Academy been able to zero in on any solutions to any of the problems being faced right now?
Well, in a way, Rodas, it goes back to what I was talking about with moral leadership. We know how to build companies. We use the tools of business, the skills of business to build those companies. But if you look at those companies that we have invested in that have really disrupted entire systems, it comes down to the character of the entrepreneur. And so Acumen Academies, you called it a silver bullet. I don't believe it's silver bullets, but our secret sauce, if you will, is the moral leadership sauce. Acumen Academy is essentially the World School for Social Change. We have about 1,300 younger leaders, entrepreneurial builders, we call them, that are working on for-profit and nonprofit solutions to poverty across the world. In West Africa alone, there are 90 fellows. We'll have about 110 in what we call our foundry by the end of the year, from Ghana, Nigeria, Liberia, Sierra Leone, the Gambia. They serve about 7 million people across sectors. Top sectors are agriculture, economic development, education, and they are extraordinary. They are deeply diverse, and they represent the best of what our country's potential is. I think of people like Hafsa Jumari, who is the founder and CEO of a company called Koamana, which supports about 180,000 smallholder farmers and small businesses, providing them with digital market access so that she can share best agricultural practices, information about flood and drought responses, both in Nigeria and in Kenya. Or Olivia Onyemaobi, who is the CEO of a company called Pad Up Creations, of, by, and for women, particularly young women. It's a social enterprise in Nigeria as well that produces reusable sanitary pads. And they have distributed over 4 million across, I think, something like 18 nations across the continent of Africa. You look at these individuals and you multiply it to 1,300, and you start to get a sense of the kind of scale that can happen when you combine the skills, the tools of business, the right kind of capital, with critically the right character, based in moral leadership that is focused on putting the smallholder farmer, putting the poor, putting the earth at the center, not just profit alone, yet understanding that we need financial sustainability and profitability to solve our problems for the long term.
What do you think needs to be prioritized? Poverty alleviation, economic growth, intervention funds. What's top priority for you?
I think it's a false pursuit to focus simply on economic growth without recognizing that inequality is one of the biggest problems that we have in the world today. And so that economic growth must also be inclusive growth. And that inclusive growth requires the moral leadership mindset that builds from the perspective of ensuring the low-income people and the vulnerable are included. You look at a continent like Africa that is doubling in population, with 45% unelectrified, enormous unemployment rates. There's no news to anybody listening, but it's either a big problem or an enormous opportunity. I choose to see this as an opportunity, and when I hear these kinds of statistics, that means we can find local entrepreneurs and provide them with the right kind of skills and capabilities and capital so that they can help not only build profitable, viable companies, but be part of solving the problems of their own nations in ways that the rest of the world can learn from.
Great stuff. About a minute to go, less than a minute. Can you give me an outlook for the year? How do you think 2023 is going to work out with the goals you set for yourself and your companies?
We're going into a lot of headwinds, obviously. In a way, Acumen historically has done our best work when things are the hardest. I think we all carry a temperament and a character that does things because they are difficult and is energized by it. And as I said, look around the world right now, there are a lot of opportunities disguised as problems to be solved. And when I see the character and the quality of so many young entrepreneurs across Africa and across the world, it gives me great hope that a new generation can help us reimagine and rebuild solutions in a way that allows our future to look more beautiful, more inclusive, more sustainable, certainly than our past.
A cruise line between Libya and Tunisia has been launched for the first time in over 11 years. The launch ceremony of the cruise line was attended by the Minister of Transport, Mohamed Al-Shuhoubi, the Tunisian ambassador to Libya's Al-Assad Al-Aji, and a number of senior Libyan officials. According to them, efforts will be made in the future to launch several cruise lines from Libya to several neighboring countries.
The celebration today is for the inauguration of a passenger terminal in the port of Tripoli, an occasion awaited since 15 years. The Port and Marine Transport Authority has fully prepared the terminal, and today the first voyage will take place to Tunisia's Jarjis, while hopefully the upcoming trips will be to Sfax in Tunisia and to Egypt and Turkey. Operating the maritime line reduces pressure on the Res Jada crossing and road traffic.
All right, that's going to do it for the Global Business Report. Do stay tuned to Arise News. From all of us, thank you so much for watching. Thanks for your company. I'm Rufus Odiri. Take care.